All right, picture this. You're at Fort Liberty, about to sit down for a serious anti-terrorism briefing.
Coffee's brewing, the projector whirs to life.
And the first slide that pops up lists PIA as a terrorist threat.
Not some obscure group you've never heard of, but PETA, the folks who want you to eat your veggies.
That's exactly what happened. And what's even crazier is that these inaccurate slides were used for years.
It's almost hard to believe we're talking about 7 years, that these slugs, which included other surprising threats like pro-life groups and environmental organizations, were part of these briefings at Fort Liberty.
7 years is a long time longer than some people serve in the military.
And it wasn't just a couple of small errors.
We dove into a Military Times article detailing this whole situation, and it mentioned Operation Rescue, National Right to Life, Earth First. First, it's like someone grabbed a phone book of nonprofits and randomly started circling names.
And the way these slides were put together is just as baffling as the content.
The Army's own investigation found that a low-level employee was tasked with creating these briefings, and apparently they were relying on their own, shall we say, research methods. No oversight, no fact-checking from credible sources.
This single individual's potentially very skewed Google search ended up shaping what thousands of soldiers were taught about terrorism.
It really makes you think twice about information sources, even in a setting like this where you'd expect, well, a bit more rigor.
We're supposed to trust the military with, national security and global intelligence, but a PowerPoint presentation that looks like it was cobbled together from internet forums made it through for years.
And this is where things transition from a bizarre anecdote to a much bigger issue.
It's not just about the military, but about all of us and the information we encounter every day.
This incident forces us to consider the very real problem of information bias. Even in institutions we tend to view as objective and immune to such errors. Think about it. If something like this could slip through the cracks in a high-stakes environment like the military, what does that say about the information we encounter every day?
That's a crucial question. This incident highlights how susceptible we all are to something called information bias. It's the tendency to favor information that confirms our existing beliefs while, downplaying or dismissing evidence that contradicts them.
So we're all walking around with these invisible filters shaping how we see the world.
In a way, yes. And it's not entirely our fault. We're bombarded with so much information these days. From social media algorithms to personalized news feeds, it's easy to get trapped in what we call an echo chamber.
An echo chamber. Sounds a bit claustrophobic.
It can be. Imagine a room where every voice, every article you encounter just echoes back your existing views.
Okay, so it's comfy, sure, but then?
It's comfortable, sure, but it also makes it difficult to challenge our assumptions and truly engage with different perspectives.
And this Army incident is like a siren blaring, hey, echo chambers exist everywhere, even in places you wouldn't expect.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to be aware of this tendency, not just in others, but in ourselves. We all have biases, and it's not about eliminating them entirely, but recognizing when they might be influencing how we process information.
Okay, so awareness is key, but
Yeah.
how do we break free from our echo chambers and make sure we're not just blindly accepting information that fits our pre-existing narratives?
It takes conscious effort, but it's definitely possible. One important step is to diversify your information sources. Don't rely on just one news outlet or social media platform. Seek out a variety of voices, perspectives, and even those that challenge your comfort zone.
Get a little uncomfortable, you're saying. Step outside my information bubble. It sounds almost adventurous.
Think of it as a journey of discovery. The more we expose ourselves to diverse viewpoints, the better equipped we are to identify our own biases and develop a more nuanced understanding of the world. Remember, it's not just about the quantity of information we consume, but the quality and the range of perspectives we're exposed to.
That makes sense. It's like,
Yeah.
instead of just reading the headlines, you actually dig into the article, consider the source, and maybe even see what other outlets are saying about the same event.
Exactly. And don't shy away from engaging with viewpoints that differ from your own. It's in those moments of discomfort that we have the opportunity to grow and learn.
It's interesting, because in the congressional hearing about this whole Army situation, one of the representatives, Andy Kim, said something that really stuck with me. He said, incorrectly labeling legitimate organizations as terrorist groups puts service members at risk.
That's a powerful statement. It highlights that this wasn't just a harmless mistake with a PowerPoint presentation. Misinformation can have real-world consequences. And while most of us aren't dealing with national security threats, the information we encounter shapes our understanding of the world, our choices, and even our interactions with others.
So this incident isn't just a cautionary tale about the military, but a reminder for all of us to be more critical consumers of information and to recognize the very real dangers of unchecked bias and misinformation.
Precisely. And it raises some important questions about accountability. The Army has taken some steps, retrained the employee involved, and launched an investigation. But is that enough to prevent something like this from happening again?
That's a good question. What systems need to be in place, both within the military and in our own lives, to ensure we're not falling prey to these kinds of errors? And what's the personal responsibility each of us has to be more discerning about the information we consume and share?
Those are questions we'll delve into further as we continue this deep dive, because ultimately this incident forces us to confront a fundamental truth about information in the digital age.
It's kind of a scary thought that information, especially in our super-connected world, can be like a weapon, even when mishandled accidentally.
That's a powerful way to put it. It really underscores why this whole thing, this military training mishap, it's not just some isolated incident, you know? It's relevant to all of us. Because, yeah, we might not be analyzing terrorist threats every day, but we are constantly bombarded with information, right?
Yeah.
And that information, well, it shapes our worldviews, our choices, even our relationships.
So where do we go from here? We can't exactly hire a team of fact-checkers to follow us around and, vet every news article and social media post.
You're right, we can't outsource our critical thinking, but we can empower ourselves to become more discerning consumers of information.
So give us the tools. What can we actually do?
It starts with cultivating a healthy sense of skepticism.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean, becoming cynical or distrusting everything you see. It's more about approaching information with a critical eye. Who's presenting this information? What's their agenda? Are there other perspectives that aren't being represented? Those kinds of things.
So it's like hitting the pause button, before hitting that share button on that shocking article or that so infuriating social media post.
Exactly. Pause, consider the source, do a quick search to see if other outlets are reporting the same thing. And here's a big one. Be especially cautious about information that confirms your existing biases.
Because it's easy to let our guard down when we're reading something that already aligns with what we believe, right?
Absolutely. In fact, research even shows that we're more likely to remember and share information that supports our pre-existing views, even if it's inaccurate.
Wow. So how do we combat that? Should we force ourselves to, only read things we disagree with from now on?
That's not necessarily the solution. It's more about actively seeking out diverse perspectives. If you find yourself, say, gravitating towards certain news sources or social media accounts all the time, make a conscious effort to explore different viewpoints.
Challenge ourselves a bit.
Exactly. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but remember, growth often happens outside our comfort zones.
That reminds me of something else Lieutenant General Matlock said in that Military Times article. He admitted that the training materials were very poorly developed. They owned up to the mistake, which is a step in the right direction.
Accountability is crucial, and transparency is key to rebuilding trust. When institutions, especially ones like the military, when they acknowledge errors and take steps to rectify them, it shows a commitment to accuracy and integrity.
And hopefully, it encourages the rest of us to do the same, to be willing to admit when we've been misled, to correct the record, and to approach information with a more critical and discerning eye.
Well said, because in the end, this isn't just about one incident, one institution, or even one PowerPoint presentation gone wrong. It's about recognizing the power and the potential pitfalls of information in our increasingly complex world.
It's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in combating misinformation, in seeking out diverse perspectives, and in becoming more responsible and discerning citizens of the digital age, which is what this show is all about.
And on that note, I hope this deep dive has sparked some new questions for you to consider. As you navigate the information landscape, think about what sources do you trust and why? How do you ensure you're getting a balanced perspective? What steps can you take to become a more discerning and responsible consumer of information?
Because ultimately, the journey towards a more informed and discerning world, it begins with each of us asking these critical questions. So until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop questioning the information that shapes your world.